Hello and welcome to another writing video. Today we're going to be talking about first drafts, but specifically I want to talk about mistakes that I've made with some of my past first drafts. As I've said before, I am currently working on a first draft right now, so this is very much in my head at the moment, but all of these mistakes are things that I've made with past first drafts, and I'm hoping I am not making with the current first draft. At least this is very much present in my mind as I'm writing this draft, to avoid these things, because they're things that I have done in the past. Most of them I've done with more than one draft, and they have not necessarily derailed my project, but they've just been constant blocks in the path, things that I've had to overcome, things that I've learned the hard way are not really great to do with first drafts. The first really big problem that basically every first draft that I've written until this one has been that I have just plunged right into the writing before being fully confident about what the end point of my story will be. Now, I'm a plotter, so I tend to leave a lot less to mystery than maybe someone who's a pantser or who's sort of kind of in between pantser plotter. There's probably going to be a lot more mystery in the drafts of those types of writers. But that being said, there are certain things that I kind of just leave to explore when I get there. I don't have to have every single tiny detail and aspect of every scene mapped out before I start the writing. But even for pantsers, even for people who are super exploration writers who like to leave a lot of mystery when they get started in their drafts, even you guys need to know where it's going. And especially for me as a plotter, I need to know that end point. You kind of have to have the finishing point of your story in your head. Otherwise, your characters are sort of out there just doing whatever, not really, I mean, how can they have something to fight for, something to push towards if you don't know what the ending is going to be? Not to mention, of course, your plot is left completely hanging. I mean, how can your characters and how can the things that happen around them have really any meaning or have any stakes at all if you don't know where the draft is going? And this is a problem that I've had with every single one of my books. Even my last one, which I talked about a little bit, I outlined it pretty detailed. Even then there were some things in the sort of climax and the end point of the book that were not entirely clear to me as the writer, so they definitely are not going to be clear to the reader. That's not to say you can't exploration write, it's not to say that you can't change things. Of course, that's what revisions are for. You can work through that, you can make things stronger, you can fix, you know, flaws and weaknesses that your first draft has. But really before you get into the writing, even if there's so much left to explore and to figure out as you write, know what your ending is going to be, know what you're driving towards, and that's going to solve so many of potential problems that you're going to have in your first draft and things that I have definitely struggled with in the past. The second mistake that I have made in so many first drafts in the past is just quite simply trying to do too much. We all want our first drafts to be really good. Even if we've already managed to accept the fact that revisions are gonna happen, they're gonna be necessary, you still want your first draft to be amazing. This is a story that you're probably feeling very passionate about. You've been dedicating so many hours and days and weeks and months to this thing. You want it to be fantastic. You want something on the other end that you're gonna be able to share with your friends and your family and your critique partners and beta readers, even if, of course, we all know that first drafts are generally not ready to go to all of those people, but you still want that pride to be there. You still want a really great first draft. So for this draft, you have all these really cool ideas and you just want to force them into this manuscript. You want that epic fight scene. You want that really great and detailed description of a place so that people can fall in love with the setting that you've created as much as you've fallen in love with it. You want that beautiful kiss scene between your characters. You want all this stuff to be so powerful and you have such high expectations for it. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be as perfect as they are in your head. When you write that first draft, there are going to be things that need work later. And there are going to be scenes that you write and you look at the end of it and you're like, what did I just write? Like, that is not how I wanted that scene to be. It's not as cool, or it's not as touching, or it's not as beautiful. That's just going to happen. Sometimes because you're just being too hard on yourself, and then other times because maybe you just had kind of a bad writing day, or maybe that scene didn't come together as you were writing it as well as it, you know, was in your head and your imagination. And that's okay. That is also just a part of the first drafting process. In the past, I would really let this get to my head sometimes, and I would just have such high expectations, and 9 times out of 10, it would result in one of two results. Okay, I could have picked a better word for that, but you know what I mean. One of two things. Either number one, I would go back and edit. I would already want to go back and fix the scene. Okay, what's wrong with it? What didn't I do well? And I would just spend so much time trying to perfect a scene when I didn't even have the first draft done. And then of course, when I got to revisions, I mean, for all I knew, that scene was gonna get cut or it was gonna get completely changed. The other possible thing that this would do to me is give me a sort of writer's block in a way. I don't actually know if I could really call it writer's block, but it would just get me completely stuck. So I would be stuck at the scene. I wouldn't be able to finish it a lot of times. Like I would be in the middle of a scene and just be like, this isn't working. I don't know what's not working. I can't do this. This isn't what I wanted. It's not as epic, or it's not as pretty, or it's not as wonderful as what I had in my head. When in reality, what I probably should have done is either not finish it and just say, this is how the scene ends, and then, you know, continue to write and come back. A lot of writers do that. Or at least just push through it, get something on the page, finish the damn scene, and move along. And then make myself a note, like I said, make myself a note that this scene does need work. I know it needs work, but it's good enough. It's on the page. First drafts do not need to be perfect. They shouldn't be perfect. They're not going to be perfect, because even those scenes that you're super proud of that you've written, most likely when you read them in revisions, you're gonna want to tweak stuff. Even if it's mostly great, you're gonna tweak stuff still. So revisions are gonna happen. Don't put so much pressure on yourself in your first draft to try to do all these epic things. Get it on the page. Some of the stuff's gonna turn out great. Some of it's gonna need some work, but at the end of the day, it's a first draft. Here's a fun one for all of you slow drafters like me, but another mistake that I have definitely made in past first drafts is to get inspired by something else midway into my project and to change directions because of this new great thing that has inspired me. This can apply to things like plots, like something really cool to happen in the story. It can also be something as simple as characterization. Like you happen upon a character, you watch a movie, you read a book, and you just love this character and the attitude that they have, or the way that they see the world, or the way that they act, or the way that they talk. Something about this character just strikes you as brilliant, and you're like, that is what I want. I need that in my story. But you're halfway through a draft. So then you just work with it from there, and you just sort of shift directions. Sometimes this is something you consciously do, like you're like, all right, this character needs to be like this, I'm gonna do it now, and I'm gonna change it. And then other times it can actually be a little bit more subconscious, to where you just start sort of writing in a different style, or the dialogue shifts, the way the character speaks or acts shifts kind of naturally without you fully comprehending. I'm about to comprehending. I have too many languages in my head. Without you fully comprehending what you're doing as you're writing. This is such a dangerous temptation that I think we probably have all had in the past, and I think it's something that stops a lot of people from finishing a coherent first draft, because you get this new idea for something, and maybe it even feels like it could fit into your current story really well without really shifting too much. But if you do shift even a little bit in that draft, you're gonna find that instead of a coherent first draft, you're gonna end up with two halves of two different stories about two different people, or more than two different people, depending on how many different things inspired you along the way. I personally think it is fantastic to read in your genre, to watch movies, to watch series that inspire you, even if they're similar to what you write. I know a lot of people are kind of against that, especially when you're first drafting. Some people try to avoid it. I personally do read in my genre as I'm first drafting, but I think it's really important to keep that separation there. Like, for example, I never read and then immediately start writing. I always make sure there's something in between to separate me. And as I'm writing, I really try to focus on my story, whether it's with a music track to kind of help me get into the right vibe, whether it's where I'm working. I make a real effort to separate myself from the things that I'm reading. And if I ever do feel like something is tampering with my writing, I'm gonna cut that out for at least the duration of my first draft writing. And if you're someone who feels like you do get too inspired or too influenced by the things that you're absorbing, whether it's reading or watching or whatever, then maybe it is a good idea for you to avoid your genre or the themes that your story is about for the duration of your first draft. And if there's something that you can incorporate in future drafts, if there's something you want to incorporate that works, you're able to actually make that decision from a better standpoint after you've written the first draft, after you've gotten some separation. Then when you can kind of look at your story from the overall view, you'll be able to much better decide, is this something my story needs? Is this something my story can even handle? Or is it too much? Is it just something that I thought was really cool that maybe I should save for a future project? Something else that I have definitely spent too much wasted time doing is psyching myself out about what future readers are going to think about something in my first draft. This can be anything from the plot itself, the setting, the world, the characters, even just a specific line of dialogue, something they say. How is a reader going to interpret this? Are they gonna like it? Are they gonna hate it? the way my character reacts to this. Are they gonna think it's petty, or are they gonna think it's too weird, it doesn't make sense for the character? What are the future readers gonna think? Are they gonna like me? Are they gonna like my book? I have spent so much time, I have wasted so much time worrying about this when I'm writing a first draft, because like I said, this is the first time you're getting this amazing story in your head, this thing that you're so passionate about, on a page. So it's when I'm starting to see this story actually unfold, and even if I know there are revisions coming and this is not the final draft, I start to see it in my head. I start to wonder, what's the cover gonna look like, and how would you read it? You know, I'm imagining myself flipping the physical pages of an actual book. It's great if you want to publish your book in the future to keep readers in mind, to be aware of this. But the problem with psyching yourself out, with thinking way too much about this in the first draft, is that it can put a huge stopper in the creative process. It can completely derail your focus. And it has, in my case, it has so many times completely derailed my focus. When you're first drafting, your first priority should be the story itself. You've committed, okay? You've decided your story, you've decided your characters, all that stuff is, you know, hopefully at least vaguely decided, but if you're a plotter, it's a lot more detailed. So it's not a time to be changing stuff anyway, so it's really not a good time to be psyching yourself out. Even if you write a line, even if, like, for example, okay, maybe you don't want to swear too much, or maybe you don't know where to sort of draw the line with how much swearing or what swear words or whatever. Write the first draft. It doesn't matter if you want to add swear words later, or if you want to take away swear words, or if you want to replace swear words. Whatever you want to do, you can do it in revisions. Don't psych yourself out about it now. It's not important. And last, one mistake that I have definitely made so many times in the past, and that I'm still kind of working on now, is being hesitant to share details about what you're writing as you're writing the first draft. Like I said before, first drafts are very, very rarely ready to be shipped off to beta readers or critique partners, and I completely understand if you don't even want a very close friend reading your raw first draft. I completely get that. I'm that way as well. That being said, it can be really good for you and even very useful and helpful from a writerly standpoint to share a little bit about your story with people in your life, whether they're other writer friends who can help you, for example, work through issues you're having in your plot, or even non-writer friends. In fact, I often will talk to people who are avid readers but who are not writers about little things about my plot when I'm sort of, you know, stuck, or when I don't quite think something's working. Even just brainstorm, even just someone to listen to me talk about something that I'm writing can be so, so helpful from my standpoint as I'm writing the first draft. It doesn't mean I have to give them pages. It doesn't mean that I have to tell them everything about it and I have to reveal the whole plot or the whole premise, but just sharing a little bit about those details can be really helpful. It can also be a little bit therapeutic in a way, just helping you talk through it. Even if it's not helping you get through a problem that you're having, just sharing that with people in your life can be really, really good for you. And keeping it bottled up like I used to, it's not healthy, especially because I want to be a published writer. But when I was, you know, a teenager, when I was writing my first novels and my first stories, I was so nervous about what people were going to think about them that I really did keep them bottled up, and it did not do me any favors. It didn't help me as a writer. It didn't help me prepare for, you know, future critiques that I was going to get. It didn't help me prepare just mentally. You know, there's a certain thing you have to overcome in your head when you hand someone a manuscript, or, you know, click send on the email and you give someone your work, and just knowing somebody else is reading what I've written, whether it's a polished final draft or whether it's a raw first draft or anywhere in between, just this sort of thing you have to overcome. That in and of itself is a very unique feeling. It's not the same as turning in an essay for school. It's not the same as giving a presentation. When it's something that you've written, creative writing for yourself, not for a project, not for a teacher, not for a class, not for anything like that. When it's something that personal, it's a really different feeling. So even just the practice of doing that, of sharing what you're working on with other people, sort of getting over yourself, getting over your own nerves or your own hesitation to talk about it, that can be super, super healthy, even if you're far away from a final draft, or even if you don't want to get published and you never want, you know, people to be reading your book that critically. It can be really healthy just to share with other people. So those are 5 of the big mistakes that I have made in past first drafts. I could make a part 2 to this. There are definitely some other things that I could talk about, so let me know in the comments if you want to see a part 2. I'm also planning another one similar to this video about mistakes that I've made in revisions. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so, and if you want to see more writing and books content from me, and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified as soon as I upload a new writing video. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram because I post there as soon as I post new videos, as well as other content, what I'm working on, Instagram stories. I really love to do writing updates and things like that, so definitely follow me there for more content throughout the week. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon in another writing video.